The twin suns hung low in the orange sky, casting long shadows over the dust-covered arena. Crowds of alien villagers gathered around the circle, their faces excited, curious, and afraid. They had seen many battles here, but this one felt different. This time, a human had entered the ring. He stood tall, even though he had only one arm. His left sleeve was tied neatly at the shoulder, empty. The rest of him was lean, sunburnt, and covered in old scars. He didn't speak, didn't smile, just stared at the center of the arena, waiting. Across the circle stood the champion, a towering alien male, with thick purple skin, 4 arms, and cruel black eyes. His name was Grothar, husband of the warrior woman Velshara, and feared across the land. He had crushed dozens in this very arena, some with fists, others with his boots. He had never been defeated. Velshara watched from the platform above, her arms crossed, her silver armor glowing in the sunlight. She was proud, cold and silent. Her husband had promised this fight would be quick. "Don't blink," Grothar had told her earlier, laughing. "One punch and the human's ribs will break like dry wood." But the human didn't look afraid. Even now, with the crowd shouting and Grothar roaring like a beast, he stood still. A quiet wind passed, stirring the dust between them. Then the gong sounded. Grothar charged like a mountain falling, all 4 arms raised. The ground shook beneath his feet. People screamed, expecting blood in seconds. But the human moved, not with panic, but with precision. He stepped aside just 1 step, and Grothar's punch missed by inches. Then the human turned, and with his only arm, he struck. 1 hit, that was all. The sound of impact echoed across the arena. Louder than the gong, Grothar's massive body froze, his eyes wide with confusion. Then he dropped to his knees, gasping for air. The crowd went silent. Velshara stood, her lips parting in disbelief. Her husband coughed blood, then collapsed, face first into the dust, unmoving. The healer ran to check, but it was too late. Grothar was dead. No one could speak. The human looked around, his face calm, not proud, not angry, just finished. He turned and walked away from the body, leaving the crowd to stare in stunned silence. Velshara jumped down from the platform and walked toward the center. Her boots crushed the dust as she passed shocked villagers. She looked down, at her husband's body, her breath heavy, her heart confused. Then she looked up at the human who had stopped at the arena's edge. "Why?" she asked, her voice strong but shaking underneath. The human turned to her, meeting her gaze for the first time. "Because he hurt people," he said simply. Velshara didn't know what to feel, anger, grief, or something else. She had loved Grothar once, but that love had turned to fear long ago. She remembered the prisoners her husband beat, the villages he burned, the children he left crying. Was this man truly a villain? Or had he done what no one else had the courage to do? The crowd remained quiet, unsure whether to cheer or flee. The elders whispered among themselves. But no one stopped the human as he walked away. No one dared. That night, the sky turned cold, and fires lit up the village. Velshara sat alone, outside her home, watching the flames flicker. The image of her husband falling played again and again in her mind, but beside it was another image, the human standing still, unshaken, and the way he looked at her, not as a conqueror, not as a monster, just as a man who did what he had to do. For the first time in years, she felt unsure, and for the first time, in her warrior life, her heart whispered a question. What if the real strength wasn't in the arms, but in the reason behind the fight? She looked up at the stars, and in the quiet of the night, she did not cry. She only whispered one word. Why? Asterisk. The next morning, the village was still quiet. No laughter, no shouting, just whispers in corners and the sound of tools scraping dirt. The arena, once full of cheers and blood, now looked like a graveyard. Grothar's body had been taken away by his own clan warriors in silence. Velshara stood at the edge of the village, arms folded tightly. She had not slept, not even for a breath. The fire inside her burned with questions. Her husband had died with one strike. From a human with one arm, it made no sense. She saw him by the well helping lift water buckets for children. The same human who shattered Grothar's chest was now laughing softly as a small girl splashed water on his boots. Velshara walked toward him, her steps heavy with confusion and something she didn't want to name. Curiosity. The human noticed her coming and handed the bucket to a boy. Then he stood still, waiting, calm again, always calm. Velshara stopped in front of him, her voice sharp. "You killed my husband." The human didn't flinch. "Yes," he said quietly. She stared at him, hoping to see arrogance, pride, maybe even fear. But there was nothing. Only honesty. "Why?" she asked again, her voice breaking slightly. "You came from nowhere, fought him, killed him, and now you're helping children fetch water. Why?" The human looked around before answering. "Because someone had to stop him." "That's not a reason," she snapped. "That's a decision." He nodded. "Yes," she felt her fists tighten. "You didn't know him." "I didn't have to," the human replied. "I saw what he did." Velshara opened her mouth, but no words came. Images flashed in her mind. Grothar throwing a villager into the mud. Grothar laughing as he broke a man's leg in front of his family. Grothar telling her fear is better than love. "Why didn't you run when he charged?" she asked finally, her voice low now. "I've faced worse," the human said simply. "With one arm?" she asked, almost in disbelief. He gave a small smile. "One arm is enough, if you aim right." The simplicity of it all made her feel strange, like she was standing on shaking ground. He didn't speak like a warrior, not like the ones she knew. He didn't talk about honor or trophies. He just did what he thought was right, then helped children the next morning. "Do you want land?" she asked, testing him. "Money? Servants? My people would offer anything." He shook his head. "I don't want prizes," he said. "I want peace." Peace. She had heard the word before, but never believed it existed. In her world, strength ruled, and the weak followed or died. But this man, this human, fought not for power but to stop pain. "Why do you care about us?" she asked. "You're not one of us." "I care about people," he said. "Doesn't matter what planet they're from." Velshara looked at the ground, her heart fighting itself. She should hate him. He killed her husband. Embarrassed. Her clan, but he also freed her village from fear. And maybe deep inside she had feared Grothar too. "Why did you really come here?" she asked one last time. The human took a breath, his eyes distant. "I was passing through looking for a place to rest," he said. "But then I saw a boy cry, and no one stopped the man who made him cry." "That man was my husband," Velshara whispered. "I know," he replied gently. "I'm sorry." She looked up, surprised by those words. He meant it. He was sorry, not for what he did, but for what she had to feel. No warrior had ever said that to her before, not even Grothar, especially not Grothar. That evening, Velshara stood alone at the edge of the village again. She watched the sunset, the sky turning gold and purple. Behind her, children played without fear. Villagers walked freely, and no one bowed their heads when they passed the human. They greeted him, smiled at him, trusted him. She turned her head slightly and saw him helping an old woman carry firewood. With one arm, he lifted the bundle with ease. She watched him, not as an enemy, but as a mystery. For the first time in her life, she whispered a thought she never expected to say. Maybe I've been following the wrong kind of strength. The village elders gathered beneath the stone tree, the tallest and oldest thing in the valley. It had seen wars, famines, weddings, and deaths, and now it witnessed something rare: peace. They had prepared gifts of gold, fine cloth, even rare minerals. All of it was laid on a blanket in front of the one-armed human. He didn't even look at them. "I don't need these," he said quietly. Elder Voss, the wrinkled leader, blinked in surprise. "It is our way," he said. "You saved us from Grothar. This is our thanks." The human only shook his head. "I didn't do it for thanks," he said, "and I'm not staying." Velshara stood near the tree, arms crossed, watching closely. She didn't understand this man. No warrior. Refused glory. No fighter turned down riches. Was he lying, or was he just different? One of the younger warriors stepped forward. "We could make you captain of the guard," he offered. "We need someone like you." But the human smiled softly and replied, "You don't need someone like me. You need to be someone like you." The words hit like a soft wind, gentle, but deep. The elders nodded slowly, unsure how to argue. The human stood, dusted off his clothes, and turned to walk away. But a small child ran up, holding a wooden carving. "For you," the boy said, "you're my hero." The human knelt down and took the gift carefully. It was a rough carving of him, one arm tall, standing over a beast. He looked at the boy and gave a rare, warm smile. "Thank you," he said, and this time he meant it. Velshara watched the moment in silence. He refused gold but accepted a child's carving. Who was this man? Later that day she found him sitting near the river skipping stones. "You really won't take anything?" she asked. He shrugged. "I don't need it." "But you could live like a king here," she said. "You earned it." "I don't want to be a king," he said. "Kings take, they command. I'm not here to rule." "Then what do you want?" she asked, her voice lower now. He tossed a stone across the water, letting it skip 4 times. "I want peace," he said. "A quiet place where I don't have to fight." She sat beside him, confused but drawn in. "You say that, but you're always ready to fight." "I fight only when I have to," he said. "But I never enjoy it." Velshara didn't know how to answer. All her life, fighting had been survival, glory, identity. She had never known a warrior who didn't crave the next battle, and yet this man, with one arm, had defeated her husband and refused everything that came after. They sat in silence, listening to the river. A bird flew past, wings flapping softly. It landed near the water, unafraid of them. "I used to think strength meant taking control," she said slowly. The human didn't reply. "But maybe," she continued, "real strength is walking away." He finally looked at her, eyes serious. "It takes more strength to walk away from power than to chase it," he said. She felt something shift inside her chest. It wasn't love, not yet. But it was something like respect, like understanding. She looked at his arm, the empty sleeve fluttering in the breeze. "How did you lose it?" she asked. He was quiet for a moment, then answered, "Saving someone." "Someone important?" "Yes," he said. "A child." She nodded slowly. "And you'd do it again?" "Without thinking," he replied. Velshara smiled softly. "You are not like the men I've known," she said. "I hope not," he said with a light laugh. That evening, he sat with the villagers around the fire. He didn't speak much, but he listened. Children leaned against him, women passed him food, old men told stories of old wars. He never asked for anything, but somehow he had earned everything. Velshara watched from a distance, her chest heavy. She didn't know what was happening to her heart, but she knew one thing. She no longer felt anger, not toward him, not even toward her husband. There was only silence, and in that silence, healing had begun. And somewhere in that quiet night, as stars blinked above and the fire crackled softly, she whispered to herself, "Maybe I don't want him to leave." The peace didn't last long. It never did in this part of the galaxy. A messenger arrived just before sunrise, his clothes torn, blood on his lips. He collapsed at the village gate, gasping for air. Velshara rushed to him, followed by the human and 2 guards. "They're coming," the messenger wheezed. "Grothar's brother. And his clan. They know." The words hit the villagers like thunder. Mothers grabbed their children, shopkeepers closed stalls. Warriors looked to Velshara with fear in their eyes. Grothar's brother, Karnak, was worse than him. Stronger, crueler, and filled with vengeance. Velshara felt her throat tighten. She turned to the human who had already picked up the messenger and carried him to shelter. The human's face was calm, but his eyes were hard like stone. "How many?" she asked. Scouts say, maybe 30 fighters, the guard answered. Too many, someone whispered. The villagers were not trained for war. They were farmers, traders, and tired people still healing from Grothar's rule. We can't fight them, one elder said. We should run. Where? Another snapped. This is our home. Let them burn it, a woman cried. As long as we live. Velshara turned to the human. What do we do? She asked. He looked at her, his voice steady. We fight. With one arm? A warrior blurted out. The human didn't flinch. I've fought with less, he said. He stood in the center of the village and raised his hand. If you want to run, run, he said loudly. But if you stay, stand beside me. Silence followed. Then a boy stepped forward, no older than 10, holding a wooden stick. I'll stand with you, the boy said. Others began to move, young, old, weak, afraid, but willing. Velshara stepped beside the human, her voice proud. I'll fight too, she said, and this time not behind my husband's shadow. The villagers spent the day preparing. Traps were laid, spears sharpened, rooftops reinforced. The human led quietly, showing where to dig, where to hide, how to aim. He knew war like a craftsman knew his tools. He didn't roar like Grothar. He didn't command like Karnak would. He just taught, and the people followed. That night, Velshara found him alone near the fire, wrapping leather around his left shoulder. She sat beside him, watching the flames dance. You could still leave, she said. I could, he answered, but you won't. No. She looked at him, really looked, at the scars on his back, the tired lines around his eyes, the strength that didn't come from size, but from somewhere deeper. Why, she asked again. Why stay for people you barely know? He turned to her, his voice quiet. Because I know what it's like to have no one stand for you. I won't let that happen here. The next morning the sky was gray, the air heavy with storm and fear. Dust rose in the distance, and with it came Karnak's riders, 30 of them, armored, armed, and burning with rage. They rode like thunder, laughing, shouting, ready to crush everything Grothar once ruled. The human stood at the gate, waiting. Velshara stood beside him. Spear in hand, the villagers were behind them, nervous, but ready. Karnak rode to the front, a beast of a man larger than Grothar, face scarred, 4 eyes glowing. You killed my brother, he roared, pointing at the human. I stopped a monster. The human replied calmly. You'll beg before you die, Karnak sneered. Try me. The human said. Karnak ordered the attack and chaos erupted. Riders charged, arrows flew, smoke filled the air. But the traps worked. Spikes rose from the ground, nets dropped from trees, and fire burst from hidden pits. The human moved like a shadow, fast and brutal. With one arm he disarmed a warrior, took his blade, and knocked him cold. Velshara fought beside him, blocking, striking, protecting his blind side. They moved like one body, covering each other, trusting without words. The battle raged for hours. Villagers screamed, warriors fell. But so did the invaders. One by one, Karnak's numbers dropped. Finally, Karnak stood alone, breathing hard, eyes locked on the human. They faced each other, the whole village watching. The human dropped his stolen blade, raising his only fist. Come, he said. Karnak roared and charged. But this time, strength alone was not enough. The human sidestepped, struck the back of Karnak's leg, spun and slammed a stone into his side. Karnak fell, coughing blood, unable to rise. The human didn't kill him. He stood over the broken warlord and said only one thing. Your kind ends here. The village stood in shock. Smoke rose from broken carts and burned fences. The ground was stained red, the air filled with the smell of sweat, fire, and blood. But Karnak was defeated, lying at the human's feet, groaning in pain. The villagers began to cheer, some weeping, some laughing. They had never seen anyone stand up to Karnak, let alone beat him. And the human had done it. With just one arm, Velshara leaned on her spear, her armor scratched and her shoulder bleeding. She looked at the human, who now stood still, breathing deeply. You did it, she said, her voice full of awe. He shook his head slowly, eyes scanning the horizon. "It's not over," he whispered. From the dust came another sound, sharp whistles like blades cutting air. Velshara turned, eyes wide. "Karnak's shadow guards," she breathed. 10 elite warriors. They don't fight for him, they fight for blood. Out of the haze, 10 figures appeared, tall, thin, wearing black armor marked with glowing silver lines. Each held twin blades curved like crescent moons. They didn't speak, didn't blink, just walked forward in perfect silence. The villagers stepped back in fear. Even the bravest warriors froze. Velshara tightened her grip on her weapon, but the human stepped forward first. "No," he said. "Let me." "You can't fight 10, she said, grabbing his arm. He looked at her, calm as always. "I'll buy you time. Protect the village," he said. Then, without waiting, he walked toward the 10 warriors alone. Velshara wanted to stop him, scream at him, grab him and run, but something in her heart told her not to. This was who he was. He didn't run. He stood, the shadow guards spread out in a circle surrounding him. The villagers watched from behind broken walls, holding their breath. The human stood in the middle. No sword, no shield, only one arm. The first 2 guards rushed in, blades slicing fast. He ducked under one, rolled forward, grabbed sand from the ground and threw it into the second's face. The blinded guard screamed as the human struck his leg and flipped him with a kick. 1 down. The second swung blindly, but the human dodged and elbowed him in the throat. 2 down. The others came faster, sharper, smarter. The third slashed across the human's side, drawing blood. He staggered, but didn't fall. He used the attacker's momentum, grabbed the blade handle, twisted and drove it into his chest. 3 down. Velshara's heart raced, her fists shaking. She had seen war, seen blood, but never like this. Never someone moving like wind, using one arm to outthink and outfight 10 killers. The 4th and 5th guards attacked together, trying to flank him. He jumped sideways, using a wall to push off and land behind them. He kicked one into the other, then grabbed a broken spear from the ground and slammed it against both heads. 6 down, but he was bleeding now, cut on his shoulder, leg, and side. Still, he stood. The 7th circled him, fast and silent. The human waited, then suddenly dropped to one knee and threw the spear like a bolt. It hit the warrior's chest with force, knocking him backward into the dirt. 7 down, 3 left. They hesitated now, unsure. The human stepped forward, limping. "Come on," he said, his voice hoarse, all at once. They did. One from behind, one from the side, one straight on. The human ducked under the first, kicked the second in the knee, grabbed the third's arm and used his weight to throw him. A blade grazed his back, deep, painful, but he turned and headbutted the attacker hard. Velshara gasped as the last one raised his sword over the human's head. But before the blade fell, the human swung a rock, cracked it right into the warrior's helmet. He dropped, silent. All 10, down. The human dropped to his knees, panting. Sweat pouring down his face, his shirt soaked with blood, hands shaking. Velshara ran to him, kneeling beside him. "You're hurt," she said. Grabbing his shoulders, he smiled weakly. "I'm alive," he whispered. The villagers came rushing in, shouting with joy, surrounding them. Some lifted the broken bodies of the shadow guards and threw their weapons into the fire. Others chanted the human's name, softly at first, then louder like thunder. He didn't rise to celebrate. He just sat there leaning into Velshara's arms, closing his eyes for a moment. "You're insane," she whispered, pressing her forehead to his. "Maybe," he replied. "But you're still here." She looked at him, her voice cracking. "I don't know what you are, but you're not just a man." He opened one eye and smiled. "Just a man with one arm, and no sense of fear." The night sky was quiet now. Stars shimmered above the village like tiny silver flames. But on the ground, the only fire that burned was the one in the center square. Its glow touched the broken stones, the torn banners, and the bruised faces of a people who had survived. The human sat near the fire, his shirt off, back covered in scars, old and new. Blood ran down his side and his shoulder was wrapped in rough cloth. His one hand rested on his knee, still strong, still steady. Velshara knelt beside him with a bowl of water and a clean cloth. She dipped it and gently pressed it to his wounds. He winced, but didn't move. "You should rest," she whispered. "I don't know how," he answered with a tired smile. Children peeked from behind crates and doors, watching the man who saved them. Elders lit incense and sang old songs of survival, but none of them came too close. It was as if the fire belonged to only two people now, Velshara and the human. She cleaned the cut across his ribs, biting her lip when she saw how deep it went. "Why didn't you let me fight with you?" she asked. "You were needed elsewhere," he replied softly. She looked at him, eyes burning. "I wanted to stand beside you." He met her gaze. "You already do," he said. "Every time you choose mercy over fear." The words melted something. Inside her for years she had worn armor not just on her body but around her heart. But now sitting beside a man with only one arm, that armor felt too heavy to wear anymore. "I don't understand you," she whispered. "You bleed like us, break like us, but you fight like nothing I've seen before." "I've just had more practice," he said, half joking. She smiled despite herself. "I've known killers, warriors, tyrants, but you fight and then help carry firewood." "Maybe that's the difference," he said. "I fight to stop pain, not cause it." She dipped the cloth again and pressed it gently against his neck. "You should have died today," she said. "I almost did," he whispered back. She swallowed hard, her hands trembling now. "I don't want to lose you." The words were out before she could stop them. The human turned slowly to look at her. She lowered her eyes, afraid of what she had just admitted. But he didn't laugh, didn't push her away. Instead, he touched her hand gently. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "Not yet." They sat like that for a long time. No words, just the crackle of the fire and the hum of the night. Villagers brought warm food and placed it nearby, nodding respectfully but keeping their distance. They knew something sacred was happening, and they didn't want to break it. Velshara picked up a piece of flatbread and held it to his mouth. He raised an eyebrow. "I'm not that weak." She smirked. "You've earned it." He bit into the bread and nodded. "Still warm," he said, his voice soft. "So is your hand," she said, not letting go. Later, when the flames were lower and the stars seemed to lean closer, Velshara laid a blanket on the ground and sat beside him. He rested back, eyes half closed. "Where will you go next?" she asked. "I haven't thought about it," he said. "I came here just to pass through." "You did more than that," she whispered. The wind brushed her hair across his chest. He didn't move, but she felt his breath change. "I've lost everything before," he said. "Home, people, even my arm." She looked at him, her voice shaking. "Maybe this place doesn't want you to lose any more." He opened his eyes, saw the reflection of the fire in hers. "I've never stayed anywhere this long," he admitted. "Then maybe it's time," she said, her hand gently resting on his chest. His heart beat strong beneath it, steady and human. He reached up, brushed her cheek with rough fingers. "You're not who I expected either," he said. She leaned closer, her voice barely a breath. "Good." That night she stayed beside him, her head resting on his shoulder. He didn't push her away, didn't speak again. He just let her stay, and that was enough. The fire burned low, but its warmth lingered like the beginning of something that didn't need words to be real, and as the village finally slept in peace, the warrior woman and the one-armed human found silence. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of two souls beginning to heal. Together, beside the fire, under the stars, the sun rose slowly over the village, soft golden light spilling across the rooftops. The ground, once stained with blood, was now quiet, clean and still. Children ran through the square again, chasing each other, laughing without fear. Old songs returned to the air, songs not of war but of mourning, of peace. The one-armed human sat outside the healer's tent, his side wrapped in clean bandages. His wounds were deep, but he healed quickly. He always did. He watched the villagers. Build again, not with pain in their eyes, but with purpose. For the first time in many years, this village had hope, and that hope had a face. His. Velshara walked toward him with quiet steps, holding something in her hands. She wore no armor today, only soft cloth and a long scarf that caught the wind. He looked up at her and smiled. "You walk like a hunter," he said. "I used to be one," she replied. "But today I bring peace." She sat beside him, close, their shoulders touching. "What's that?" he asked, nodding toward the object she carried. She held it out gently, a necklace with a pendant carved from dark stone. It was the same stone that once belonged to Grothar, her husband. But the shape had changed. It no longer showed a beast, but a tree growing through broken rock. "I want you to have it," she said softly. He blinked, surprised. It was his. "It was," she said, "but now it means something else." He looked at it, then back at her. "I'm not your champion," he said. "I didn't do this for reward." "I know," she said. "That's why it's yours." He took the pendant and ran his fingers over it. The stone felt warm from her hands. "I've never stayed anywhere long," he admitted. "I always moved on. Left before things got too real." She didn't answer right away, just watched the children playing in the distance. "I used to think the same," she said. That strength meant standing alone. He looked at her, waiting. "But then, someone showed me," she continued. "That real strength is choosing to stay, even when you're afraid." She turned to him, eyes steady, voice soft. "So I'm asking you now, not as a warrior, not as a leader, but as me. Stay." The word hung in the air like a quiet bell. Stay. He looked down at the necklace again, then at the village, then at her, and for once he didn't feel the pull to keep walking. He didn't feel the need to escape, he only felt peace. "You sure about this?" he asked, his voice low. "I've never been more sure," she said. He smiled just a little. "I guess I could build something here." "You already have," she whispered. The days that followed were slow and warm. He helped rebuild the arena, not for fighting, but for music and games. Velshara trained young warriors not to conquer, but to protect. They worked side by side, planting crops, fixing roofs, laughing in the sun. At night they shared food under the stars. She sat close, always leaning into his good shoulder. He never said much, but she understood him. And when he finally called, her name softly one night, just once, she smiled and took his hand. One evening, the village held a celebration, not for a battle, but for peace. The children danced, the elders told stories, and firelight painted the sky with gold. Velshara stood with the human in the center, her voice proud. "This man," she said, "came to us as a stranger. But now he is our shield, our brother, our—" She paused, then looked at him. "Our home," she finished. The people cheered, loud and joyful. The human just stood there, smiling quietly, holding her hand. Later, when the fire dimmed and the sky turned silver, they sat alone outside her house, the night breeze soft and cool. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You never told me your name," she said suddenly. He chuckled. "You never asked." "I'm asking now." He looked up at the stars, then down at her. "My name's Kale," he said. She repeated it slowly, like tasting a new fruit. "Kale. It means stone in my tongue," he said. "Then it suits you," she whispered. Strong, silent, unshakable. He looked at her, truly looked. "I think I've found something here," he said. "Something worth staying for." "You have," she replied. "And so have I." And as the stars turned above them, and the wind rustled the trees gently, the warrior woman who had once lived in fear and the human who once wandered alone sat side by side, not as strangers, not as survivors, but as something more, not just a tale of strength, but a story of healing, of choice, of love, of home.